that same issue becomes considerably less relevant when they run for the office of the President of the United States. Another element here is, as a voter, you may conclude that the political climate on a particular issue is simply not ripe for addressing the issue. That quite simply, there are so many other things that seem to have more pressing urgency at this point in time in the life of this republic, that voting on this issue is largely irrelevant to what the real policy agenda is likely to be for the next 3 or 4 years in our country. Or it may even be that there is a certain candidate whose values and principles you admire and like very much, and yet it's still possible to conclude they simply don't have the political skill or the intelligence or the ability to effectively act on these values that you share with them. Prudence takes into account all these things: the right time, the right person, the right issues about which to vote. Let me conclude then with some comments about issues and context in our voting. Let me be clear, some issues do weigh more than other issues on the moral scale. Some issues, defense against direct assaults on human life, opposition to deliberate and consistent attacks on essential human rights. These things are deserving of great weight as we think about what's at stake. And there is greater room for disagreement on some issues than there are on others. How best to deliver health care? There's more leeway for debate there, it seems to me, than whether or not we can engage in torture as an interrogation tool. Even here, however, to say that there is room for disagreement in some areas does not mean necessarily that any position on health care is acceptable, or any position on alleviating poverty, or any position on global warming. Church teaching surely points us in a direction which we should be willing to follow. Any candidate who effectively dismisses or denigrates or downplays the claims that the poor may make upon us for basic rights is manifestly acting inconsistently with Christian teaching. When weighing issues, the first error, therefore, is to treat all issues as being of equal moral weight, or all policy options as equally legitimate. The second issue of error is to focus on only one issue, ignoring the rest of Christian teaching, or to concentrate on only one policy choice as if there are no legitimate policy disagreements. Let me try and put this in a fairly, I think, folksy way that I hope will make some sense to you. Mary Smith is a doctor. She's also a wife. She's a mother. She's a daughter. She's a sibling. She's an active parishioner. She's an amateur gardener. She loves to travel and see new and different places. Each of these roles is important. Each of them is useful. Each of them helps to make Mary Smith who Mary Smith is. Yet they're not all equally important. If there are conflicts in those roles, most of us would agree some priorities are clear. But it would be wrong to think that any one of those roles should dominate all the other roles, squeezing out all other responsibilities or duties in those other roles. It may be that at certain times and places, different roles get different values. There are also a variety of ways that Mary can fulfill her roles. As a doctor, helping a patient can take different forms. Contributing to her parish can be done in several ways. Even being a good parent can be expressed in diverse methods. But not all approaches are equally good, even if there is legitimate diversity. And at some point in her life, being a faithful daughter to elderly parents may weigh more heavily than some other role she's playing. At other points in the life of her children, being a good parent may be the role that gets most of her attention. But when her children are 35 and independent, it may well be that some other role looms in importance. In other words, what's key here in Mary's life is integration, balance, judgment. Many things are important. Some things matter more than others. The important thing is to give each good thing its proper due. And there are different ways to try to do this and strike a balance. In short, what Mary needs is prudence in integrating and balancing multiple duties. I want to suggest to you analogously the same thing is true for us in our roles as intelligent, prudent voters. There are many claims upon our votes, and some issues and some goods may loom larger at certain points in our life or in the life of the political society we're in, and at other times recede in importance. The judgments as to, in this time and place, how one strikes that balance of competing goods cannot be solved by some simple one-size-fits-all formula. It has to allow for individuals to exercise prudent judgment. Another area for consideration in voting conscientiously is to consider the concrete political situation in which our vote occurs. This suggests a couple of things. First, it is not always easy to find out where candidates stand on controversial issues, since good politicians tend to be fairly nimble in moving around on the issues when they're before the electorate. Positions shift from primary campaigns to general elections. Different signals get sent to different audiences, and positions are sometimes adopted not out of any great personal conviction, but because they're a way of exploiting the weaknesses of one's rival.
To hear more, visit the Church in the 21st Century Center webcast archive at www.bc.edu/church21.